Everyone doesn't live past 120, right? But is it inevitable? From the biological perspective, no. Why do whales live 200 years? Why do sharks live 400 years? Why do the clams in our linguinian clams, the clams live up to 500 years? There's nothing special about these lifespans in terms of the biology. And we just need to uncover the secrets of the whales and the sharks and the clams and ourselves and the worms to really understand how we can push that boundary back. And it's all about health, right? It's not about lifespan in the end. It's about health. Life expectancy will go up if we are healthier, and we just want to push that out as far as we can.
Hello, and welcome to Not Born Yesterday, a podcast dedicated to older adults and the challenges and joys of aging. I'm Miriam Goodman. Not Born Yesterday examines the problems and solutions of growing older today. We bring you the wisdom and voices of experts in the field of aging and offer tips on how to feel your best, use your lifetime skills and experience, and make the coming months and years as fulfilling as possible.
I'm Lynn Winter Gross. Not Born Yesterday is brought to you by Next Village SF, a local nonprofit providing older adults with support to help age in place.
Today on Not Born Yesterday, we're talking about aging, again, but from a scientific approach. This is not a redo of your 8th grade biology class, but you may not realize that there are molecular and biological drivers of aging. Plus, there are genes and lifestyle choices that contribute to how we age. Our guest will explain some of the new age-related therapies being created to empower us to live more vibrant, healthy, and active lives.
Professor Gordon Lithgow is a professor and vice president of the Buck Institute for Research on Aging. The Lithgow Lab is focused on uncovering genes and identifying small molecules that prolong lifespan through enhancing molecular stability that often goes out of balance during aging. It sounds complicated, and it probably is. So let's get started. Professor Lithgow, welcome to Not Born Yesterday.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to be here.
So you say that there's a difference between living long and living healthy. Can you explain that?
Oh, sure, Miriam. I mean, I think we know this experience ourselves that we have friends or relatives that have that successful aging ability where they're productive and they're moving around and they're doing all sorts of interesting things late into life. And you know, of course, we all pass away, and sometimes that period of illness at the end of life is very short. And really, that's what we all want, right? You know, we want to be 6 feet up a ladder working on our roses, and the next day to be elsewhere. And of course, the opposite scenario is that we spend years and years and years in long-term care for horrible, fearful diseases, and unfortunately, that is the reality for the majority of us, and that's what we're trying to get away from. So we strongly believe that we can do the former and we can get rid of the latter.
The Buck Institute that you're associated with says that our longevity is 93% lifestyle and only 7% genetic. Is it the 7% that makes certain diseases run in families?
There's a little bit of that going on, but it's very small actually, and that was a big surprise. Where genes are really important is if you think about the difference between your lifespan and your pet cat or your pet dog's lifespan. That's all genetic, right? That's really big differences in lifespan, sort of decades and decades of difference. But when it comes down to disease, there are certain risk factors for sure for disease, but the biggest risk factor of all is aging. And overall, aging is not particularly governed strongly by genes. It's governed by the environment. And the environment is everything that we experience from birth. It's probably things that we experienced before birth. It may even be things that our parents experienced, influence our aging rates. So that's a recent surprise, but it's also a very powerful message that there are some things that might be under our control.
Well, that's what bothers me a little bit, because when we say it's under our control and we feel like we're doing the right thing and we get sick anyway, or we're doing the right, or other people are doing the right thing and they die anyway. And we on this podcast are always telling people eat right, exercise, stay socially connected, find purpose in your life. And you say that over and over again, but I almost feel like it's a burden to place on us to say, gee, so we would feel guilty, I guess is the problem. We feel guilty as maybe we didn't exercise as much as we should have, or maybe we didn't keep our weight down as much as we should have. So how do we deal with taking control and not having all that guilt?
Actually, Miriam, that's exactly the way I think about this, is that we have this overall drive toward a healthy lifestyle, and that's good. But at the same time, if you come down with a diagnosis of Alzheimer's, you shouldn't be blamed for it. You can't think your way out of Alzheimer's. You can't behave your way out of Alzheimer's. And it's an important message for us all. It's not a very positive message, but it's the message is that unfortunately aging brings with it a level of disease in human populations for almost everyone, with the rare exception of the centenarians and the successful aging and so on. And so we can do our best, but there's a problem there. And the problem, I think, is something that science has to address. This is biomedical science, in the same way that with childhood diseases like measles and polio and tuberculosis, we couldn't think our way out of those either. We had to find preventions and cures. We had to find antibiotics and vaccines. And I think the same now should be thought of for the diseases of late life and aging, heart disease, bone loss, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, this whole plethora of things that come with aging. We have to break through and understand that we can potentially prevent or cure these diseases.
I'm interested in how you do your research. Normally, you think of research, animal research, we think of animals that are more like us, like gorillas or monkeys. But your research is on these tiny worms. And how do life of worms relate to the life of human beings?
Well, this is a great week to ask that question because two Nobel Prize winners just turned up for work that they did on this tiny worm, C. elegans. It's a millimeter in size, about the size of a comma. So it's a tiny little animal, but it is remarkable because it has so many conserved features with us. We share a lot of genetic material. We share a lot of biology, and actually it speaks to how deeply conserved aging is. This is an ancient process. Animals tend to not actually age in the wild, but if you protect them enough and you bring them into the lab, all animals age. The processes that drive the aging are conserved between very different animals, from tiny worms to mice to gorillas, if you like, and to us. And so biologists have always done this trick of saying, well, what's the simplest animal or what's the simplest system that displays the thing we're interested in? And the worm is just about the simplest system that displays aging that we can study. And so we go to the worm to reveal these secrets that are relevant to us. And I think the track record is that, yes, the things that determine lifespan in a simple worm are the things that determine lifespan in mammals, including ourselves. It's kind of amazing, really. I never thought that, when I started this, my career, that I'd be talking like this.
Did I read that worms only live 7 days?
Yeah, they're around about 20 days, 20 to
20
30.
days.
But in the lab, we can make them live 5 times longer with genetic tricks. And even with sort of drug-like molecules, we can double their lifespan. And in human terms, that's ridiculous, right? And I'm not saying that's possible now or even, in the near future, but it says that the biology of aging is not fixed. It's not inevitable. And that's really important. Going back to Miriam's point about, we do the best we can with lifestyle, and there's this burden associated with doing the best that we can, but people or friends and relatives get sick anyway. It goes back to that point that actually, when you look in animals in the laboratory, it's not inevitable that they're going to get sick. And you can do these interventions in aging that push back the time at which disease happens and push back death. And we do this all the time, routinely in the lab. We make worms live longer. We make mice live longer. We make the disease period much shorter. That's unbelievable. And when you see that in the lab, you find yourself on podcasts like this talking about it.
So when physicians talk to older adults, they usually caution them to reduce the stress in their lives. So I assume the worms are under a lot of stress, but what about good stress and bad stress? I understand that you believe good stress is good for you.
Yeah, so what's the difference there? Well, good stress is something like exercise. Good stress might be a social interaction that gets your brain going. It might be stressful at the time, but you come out of it, with a new thinking and new thoughts. Um, good stress maybe working intellectually hard on something for a while. But the difference between good and bad, I think, is the length of time. So a good stress is short, it's acute, and you get time to recover from it, whether it's psychosocial stress or physical stress. And a chronic stress, a long-term stress, tends to be the bad stress. And this is true from worms, I think, through to what we know about in humans, is that we should be challenging our system. Our body's built to withstand stress. We have all these amazing cellular molecular mechanisms that fight against the ravages of stress, whether it's physical or psychological. And we want to activate those mechanisms. So if we're in a cocoon all the time and we're never stressed, those mechanisms never are activated. But activating those mechanisms tend to have a sort of anti-aging effect. Talking about these millimeter-sized worms, but if you give them a little environmental stress like exposure to heat for a while, and then you bring them back to normal really quickly, they live longer. Why would they live longer if they've been stressed? Well, what's happening is you're activating these deep processes in biology that have been around forever in evolution that respond to stress, and they're beneficial. They repair damage in cells, they get rid of bad cells, they prevent disease. And so a little bit of stress is good for you. It's what our grandmothers used to say. A little, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. That's the principle at play here, and it's real biology.
Interesting. I also want to ask you about, are you looking at lifestyles at all and what happens in different ages? And there's been talk lately about realigning the course of our lives, like maybe putting off college until later in life and working less hours when you're younger. So when you're physically healthy, you can travel. Have that been tried anywhere in the world, or are you studying any of that? How to change of lifestyle maybe during our ages, different ages affects longevity?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the Buck Institute, although we're a basic biology institute at heart, we're definitely branching out into thinking about these different aspects of human aging. And in fact, we have a whole new center on phenomic health, which is the idea of how people appear at every single level of their being is important for their aging trajectory. And that would include these kind of lifestyle choices. So I think it's exciting. I'm not doing this directly. But I think it's exciting that these questions are being asked, because every time someone asks a question like that, as a biologist, I want to know what's going on. If someone's pushing back college or making a career choice that alters the normal trajectory of their stress responses, going back to stress, for example, what does that do to their actual biology? And then in those populations that are challenged and don't have the opportunity to make those choices, so socioeconomic standards are a huge driver of different aging trajectories. If you don't have the choice to take time off, if you don't have the choice to spend time with your children because you're running 3 jobs at a time and your stress levels are high and your cortisol's high and all the biology that is associated with that kind of unfortunate lifestyle plays out in aging, and it turns out you age faster. So these different life trajectories absolutely have an effect on the biology of aging and the likelihood that you're going to suffer from age-related disease. So I think it's really super interesting that, if you like, the social gerontologists, people who think about the social biology of aging, or sorry, the sociology of aging, are now talking to the biologists and thinking, what can we measure in people that reveals their likelihood of disease, their likelihood of successful aging? It's very new, and I know I'm not saying anything here that's really helpful to anyone other than keep your eye on this. This is a very, very interesting area of biology and sociology.
So, are you or others in the aging research community finding drugs that will postpone the onset of those diseases you mentioned that affect older adults, like dementia or Parkinson's?
Yes. Yes, in worms, and yes, in mice. Unfortunately, that's been the answer for quite a few years now. We've been doing this for a while, and it's relatively trivial for, maybe a high school student from Marin County here in California to come in and find a drug over the course of a summer that changes the aging rate in a worm, which is remarkable. And it really affects us all when that happens. We think, what's possible here for humans? Now, the challenge is translating that research into meaningful therapies. And that's a big, big problem because it's somewhere between 2 to 5 billion with a B dollars to bring a drug to market. So when we say, do we have a therapy today that's going to change the course of aging in humans and prevent disease? I believe they're there, but they tend to be locked up in freezers in laboratories around the world, and we need to free them. And the way to free them is to invest in, yeah, I don't care how we do this, whether it be governmental resources or corporate resources or whatever, but we need to invest in looking at the biology of aging, realizing we have molecules already that might be good candidates for drugs and moving them into clinical research. Now, we're doing this at the Buck Institute. We have 3 coming up for 4 or 5 clinical trials that use this principle of studying aging first and then thinking about how affecting aging could affect the course of disease. And there are other groups doing this around the world, and the signs are very good that this will happen. But I would say it hasn't quite happened yet. So we've all got a role in promoting this idea that we need to translate the basic science into meaningful therapies. It's almost like we've discovered in the early days of, infectious disease, you discover antibiotics, right? But the discovery of antibiotics, it took over a decade or more to turn that into a drug. And I think we're in that gap in between the discovery and the actual helping people time.
I was just reading this week that all the talk about everybody who's born today living to be 100, some people are rethinking that. Not
Yeah.
so fast, they're saying. What is your reaction to that?
Yes, no, I see that, and I'm not too surprised. That what's been going on till about 10 years ago or so is an increase in life expectancy from birth. That means, when you're born, how long do you expect to live? That's been going up in a very, very precise way since 1840. And it's been going up because of social policy. It's been going up because of antibiotics and vaccines. Along the way, over those years, you see improvements in public health that have allowed life expectancy to go up. A lot of it based on childhood illness and preventing that. But now we're hitting this wall of age-related illness, and we don't have the therapies and we don't have the cures yet. And the other problem is that we're seeing all these other causes of mortality coming in, including diabetes, which hopefully will be on the run soon, but let's see. Drug addiction, fentanyl, gun deaths. I mean, it's just amazing the different things that are coming in to affect the numbers that then end up being life expectancy. So, yeah, I think we are hitting a wall. It sounds like I'm contradicting myself here. I'm saying we're hitting a wall, and then 2 minutes ago I was saying it's not inevitable. And I think they're both true. We are currently hitting a wall where we're coming up against the reality that most humans do not live past 120. Most, forget it. Everyone doesn't live past 120, right? But is it inevitable? From the biological perspective, no. Why do whales live 200 years? Why do sharks live 400 years? Why do the clams in our linguinian clams, the clams live up to 500 years? There's nothing special about these lifespans in terms of the biology. And we just need to uncover the secrets of the whales and the sharks and the clams and ourselves and the worms to really understand how we can push that boundary back. And it's all about health, right? It's not about lifespan in the end. It's about health. Life expectancy will go up if we are healthier, and we just want to push that out as far as we can.
On this podcast, we like to give our listeners something they can do individually to change their lives for the better or to help others who are healthy stay healthy and connected. Can you give us some advice that we can have people take away that they can put into practice now to stay healthy longer?
Yeah, I really wish I could, and I think that reflects some of the things I said earlier about individuals giving individuals advice is a dangerous business, and in fact, one of the most uh, trustworthy and famous scientists studying human biology recently, in I heard him say that he wouldn't even give advice to an individual about exercise. And I thought, that's crazy. Are you kidding me? This is the most powerful anti-aging medicine we have. And he said, of course it is, but I don't want to give an individual that information because they may exercise and it might kill them. They may have a pre-existing condition where they can't exercise. And so I think this idea of advice has to be taken very carefully and broadly. And so, it always comes with the caveat that for most people, this might be a good idea. But first of all, talk to your physician. Get advice on whether this might be a good idea for you. And then, of course, for me, it comes back to things like something as simple as vitamin D, making sure your vitamin D levels are within the normal range. We know that low levels actually increase the risk of all sorts of age-related diseases. So vitamin D seems to have effect on aging itself. And so why not try to have that in the normal range? That's a fairly easy thing with your physician to discuss and be in the normal range. And I say this because the population of Scotland, my home country, it's dark there a lot. There's not a lot of vitamin D in the food, and there's a lot of vitamin D deficiency. And that's something simple that Scotland has been, aiming to fix that can really improve overall aging. So that's the kind of advice I like, where it's generally safe. It's generally something that applies to almost everyone, and it's generally something you can say, talk to your physician about this, because they probably know about this already. So I'm sorry, it's definitely exercise, it's definitely vitamin D, it's definitely what's the phrase? Everything in moderation, apart from moderation itself. Um,
That's a good one.
I'm a PhD, not an ND, and I'm definitely reluctant to tell you to go out and take a particular supplement or a particular drug. I want to see those double-blind trials. When that happens in aging, I'll come back and say, take this, take that with the consult of your physician, and this will probably of benefit to your aging.
Let's assume our physicians have all this good information.
Let's assume they're being trained to have that. That's right.
Well, thank you so much for all this fascinating information. Our guest today was Professor Gordon Lithgow of the Buck Institute. Today on News You Can Use, we're sharing thoughts of older adults. Reddit, an online social news and discussion forum, asks people over 60 a simple question: what gets better as we age? Here are a few of the responses. Now, keep in mind that these are individual responses and may not apply to you, but they are heartfelt and may encourage you to ask yourself the same question. These are quotes from real people. We didn't make them up.
Here's one. You get smart about people. I can now tell far more easily whom to trust versus who was trying to take advantage of me. These were things I was oblivious to when I was younger, but now I see things a lot clearer.
Another response was knowing that you are fully formed. You don't have to take on any more self-improvement projects, even though you surely can if you want to. But I don't need to improve my vocabulary or my attitude. I can do whatever I want now. Just leave me alone and let me do whatever it is I'm doing. And if I'm doing it wrong, don't bother telling me. I'm most likely not going to get any better at it, and that's okay with me.
Here's one. I'm 61 years old, and I know it'll be a few more years before I can retire. One thing I've learned as I get older is maintaining a better work-life balance. Before, I only took sick leave if I was truly too ill to work, but now I no longer fear that they won't need me anymore if I'm not in the office. I have unique skills because of my age, and that will never not be valued.
Or you can get to sit back and watch how people handle situations that you've been in yourself. And sometimes they get it right, and sometimes they fail. My mom used to give me this grin whenever she knew the outcome of a situation I had to learn from her.
Here's another one. Depending upon your health, fitness work gets amazing because the more you exercise and stretch, the more it relieves most of the annoying aches and pains that come with age. I'm less worried about how it makes me look, and I'm more focused on how it makes me feel.
At 60, the house was paid off, the cars were all paid for, and all my student loans were finally paid off. At 62, I got out of the stupid truck for the last time after grinding for 44 years. The next day, the alarm clock did not go off at 2 a.m. The peace of mind and the ridiculous calmness one can experience at this point is something I can only hope for every hardworking soul.
How's this one? I spend less money on crap that I don't need. That extra money is used for lots of travel, and I have more time to do exactly what I want. Sans enduring a few headaches and pains, and of course, aging. I would definitely say the years beyond 60 are the best so far.
And the last is, as I look back, I find it interesting how I've simplified my emotions. That sounds strange, but what I mean is that I've learned when not to get highly emotional and when to intensify my emotions. In 1987, if someone cut me off while driving, I would yell, flip them off, and ride close behind them for a bit. But now I realize that the guy who cut me off in 1987 had absolutely zero impact on my life today, and that reacting that way I did accomplished nothing. It didn't even make me feel better. If it doesn't impact me or my family and friends, I dial back the emotional response.
And that's our podcast for today. Our thanks to Professor Gordon Lithgow of the Buck Institute. You can learn more about Next Village SF at their website, nextvillagesf.org. Our theme music is from Hook Sounds, and Jason Dahlstedt is our engineer. And we thank you for listening. We'd love to hear what you would like us to discover and discuss. Please contact us at notbornyesterdaypodcast.org. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. All of our podcasts are free and help us know our audience better. Be well, stay strong, and remember, you weren't born yesterday. I'm Lynn Winter Gross.
And I'm Miriam Goodman.